My fiancé's best friend had just gotten her driver's license and was already giddy about borrowing my limited edition Porsche to show off. I said no. She went ballistic and trashed my car. The Porsche, now just a warped, scratched, shattered mess. Blue paint splattered all over the body, messy letters scrawled across the hood. The side mirror was smashed, the logo clawed to shreds, the smell of fresh paint mixed with metal. I went to Lucas Mercer, my fiancé, for an explanation. I hadn't even opened my mouth when Peyton stepped right in front of me, voice cold and full of challenge. "It's a woman-to-woman thing. Handle it yourselves. Don't stress Lucas out." I looked at her, then turned to him. Lucas barely glanced at me, his tone casual like it was nothing serious. "It's just a joke, babe. No need to make such a big deal out of it. It's just a car, right? Let's say you gifted it to me." I laughed, a soft but cold laugh, like metal scraping metal. Without another word, I pulled out my phone and dialed. "Cancel every investment I've made into the Mercer family." I said it slowly, clearly, not loud, not shaking. The call lasted less than 10 seconds, but by the time I hung up, Lucas's face had changed color. He jumped up, slamming his hand on the table. "Skylar Sterling, are you insane? Do you know how much damage pulling out now will cause?" I looked at him, calm, like every emotion had been drained out of me. "Didn't you just call off the engagement?" I paused for a beat, my voice dropping lower, sharp enough to cut air. "Then I have no reason to keep funding your crumbling company." I turned to leave, then looked back at him, eyes steady. "And one more thing," I said slowly. "10 million in damages. Have her pay me through you?" But I hadn't taken more than a few steps when Lucas raised his hand. 2 bodyguards in black suits immediately stepped in front of me. He walked toward me slowly, his voice cutting through the room, each word landing like a hammer. "Skylar Sterling, who do you think you are to call off this engagement?" I stood still, saying nothing. He smirked, that arrogant smile spreading across his face. "Don't think I don't know. Grandpa Sterling's family trust clearly states, you only get access to the voting shares if you marry Senator Mercer's legitimate son before turning 30. As of now, you're just the acting CEO. You don't have any real decision-making power." I blinked, but didn't respond. Grandpa's family trust had never been made public. Not even the Sterling and Company board knew the exact terms. Yet Lucas recited every clause as if he'd written the document himself. A chill ran down my spine. So, everything he knew about me, about my family, it wasn't coincidence. Lucas stepped closer. Only a hand's width between us. He reached out, pretending to gently brush my hair back behind my ear, and lowered his voice to a whisper. "If I were you, I'd apologize now. Maybe I'll be in a generous mood and let the wedding happen a little sooner." I still didn't move, but beside me, Peyton Whitmore stepped forward, draping her arm around my shoulders like we were old friends, her laugh dry and mocking. "I'd love to see it, honestly. The great CEO Sterling saying sorry. Wonder what that would look like." Then she pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen, opening TikTok. She was about to live stream, and in that exact second, I swung my arm. A slap cracked through the room. Peyton staggered back, crashing into the edge of a glass table. She clutched her stomach and let out a sharp, dramatic scream. "It hurts! Lucas! It hurts!" Everything happened so fast. I stood still, breathing steady, my eyes cold, like I hadn't moved at all. Lucas froze for half a second, then rushed over, gathering Peyton in his arms, helping her up. His face was red with rage. "Skylar Sterling, how dare you lay a hand on someone?" he shouted, but I only let out a quiet, contemptuous laugh. I brushed off the spot on my shoulder where Peyton had touched me, my expression disgusted. "Consider that a gentle warning," I said slowly, clearly, each word slicing the air. Next time you forget your place, I won't stop at just a slap. I thought that would be enough. But as I turned to walk away, Lucas yelled, "Hold her!" One of the bodyguards grabbed my arm, squeezing hard. Pain shot through my shoulder, but I didn't scream. I just turned my head, locking eyes with Lucas. He stepped in, voice lowered. "Skylar, apologize." Now my jaw clenched. My car had been destroyed. I was the one insulted. And now I was the one expected to bow my head? I let out a short, sharp laugh, like a knife being unsheathed. What if I don't? The room went silent. The only sound was Peyton's shallow sobbing from the floor. She slowly dragged herself upright, clutching her arm, face streaked with tears and snot, voice trembling. "Lucas, just forget it. It's my fault. I got hit." Lucas looked at her, eyes full of pity. Then, with a tone I had never once heard him use on me, soft, almost tender, he replied, "What are you saying? This has nothing to do with you. Skylar clearly did it on purpose." Then he turned to me, grabbed my chin tightly, forcing me to look up, his eyes blazing. "I'm not going to repeat myself. Apologize to Peyton. And maybe I'll pretend none of this ever happened." I stared at him. That face, that voice. This was once the man who had gotten down on one knee under the Hamptons lights to propose to me, the man who had held my hand through brutal meetings in Manhattan boardrooms. But now all that remained was a stranger, calculating, cold, manipulative. I spat on the marble floor, voice flat as steel. "You want me to apologize?" I lifted my eyes, staring straight into his. "Not a chance." And just as the words left my mouth, one of the bodyguards behind me shoved hard. My body lost balance, flung toward the glass staircase. The sound of impact rang out, sharp, cold. The world spun around me, and everything dissolved into a blur of blinding white. When I opened my eyes again, the first thing I saw was a blinding white light shining down from the ceiling. The sharp scent of antiseptic filled the air, and the steady beeping of the heart monitor echoed in the cold space. I was in a hospital room. My left wrist was wrapped tightly, my head pounding. Lucas sat there, right by the bed. When he saw me wake up, he exhaled in relief, his voice shaky, just enough to sound remorseful, but clearly rehearsed. "Skylar, I'm sorry. I only acted out of anger over the engagement being called off. I didn't mean to hurt you." He reached out, trying to take my hand, but I quietly pulled back. I said nothing. I just stared at the ceiling, where the white light poured down, cold, metallic. When I didn't respond, Lucas spoke again, this time softer. "Peyton's actually had a tough life. She's an orphan, alone in New York. I just wanted to help her, that's all. You get it, right?" I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, hearing the IV drip ticking steadily beside me. There was nothing left to say. This wasn't the first time he defended Peyton. The first time, she pretended to test my loyalty by filming a fake flirty video with Lucas. When I confronted them, they laughed and told me I was too sensitive. The second time, at our engagement party, Peyton held the ring in her hand and joked, "Let me hold on to it for Lucas so he doesn't lose it." When she gave it back, she pulled it straight off her own finger and placed it on mine, right in the middle of everyone's laughter. Every time I chose to stay silent, all I got in return was humiliation. And each time, Lucas would be there, saying soft words that made it sound like he was protecting me. But really, he was just making excuses for her. When I still didn't speak, he must have assumed I was calming down. Lucas scooted his chair closer, his voice dropping low. Gentle, but icy. "Skylar, could you delete the garage camera footage? It's just a car. Don't destroy her life over this." I turned to look at him. Slowly, like I was staring at a stranger. So that's why he was here. Not because of me, not because of the fall. He came to ask for the video, the one that proves his best friend vandalized my property. I opened my eyes fully, fixed them on him, a look that made him pause. "Lucas," I said, my voice hoarse but clear, "let's call off the engagement." The room fell completely silent. Lucas froze, eyes wide, then let out an awkward, forced laugh. You really thought this through? You're willing to give up the voting shares? He said it with a tremor, not because he was afraid of losing me, but because he was afraid of losing the privileges that came with the sterling name. I didn't respond. I just looked at him. For so long, he began to unravel. His face shifted. First surprise, then worry, then panic. He grabbed my hand, his voice rising. "Skylar, you're still upset about the bodyguards, aren't you?" "I swear I didn't mean for that to happen. If you're still angry, then hit me. Hit me, I won't fight back." And then, he grabbed the small flower vase on the side table and shoved it into my hands. I stared at him, baffled for a second, then laughed. What did he think? That if I smashed something, my heart would magically be okay again? I let go. The vase dropped to the floor, shattering into hundreds of sharp pieces. The sound echoed, high and clear, through the empty room. White rose petals spilled out, rolling across the floor beneath the bed. I followed them with my eyes and sighed. The broken shards caught the light, like our relationship, already cracked beyond repair. Lucas bent down, picking up the pieces one by one, muttering, "I'm sorry, I didn't want it to end like this." But I wasn't listening anymore. I was staring out the window. The New York sky was pale, veiled in mist. Somewhere out there, an ambulance siren wailed, steady, fading into the distance. And I knew, maybe what I just lost wasn't a man. It was the final illusion that he ever truly loved me. Right at that moment, the door swung open. Peyton walked in wearing a pure white dress, the soft silk draping like it was intentionally highlighting the innocence she'd plastered onto her face. She leaned gently on Lucas's shoulder, her voice as light as mist. "Maybe I should talk to Skylar alone?" I didn't look at Lucas anymore. I raised my arm coldly and pointed straight at the door. "Both of you, get out!" Lucas lowered his head, a flash of disappointment across his face, then quietly left. The sound of his shoes faded down the hallway. But Peyton didn't follow. As soon as the door clicked shut, she flipped like a page. Her fake smile stretched taut, her heels tapping rhythmically on the polished tile as she approached my hospital bed. "There's something I haven't had the chance to tell you yet. Turns out, we're family." My brows furrowed, heart skipping a beat. She reached into her clay-colored Hermes bag, pulled out a glossy photo, and shoved it in front of my face. Two people in the picture. A young man with a sharp nose, a girl clinging to his arm, sunlight flooding the windowsill behind them. "Back then, for money, my dad agreed to marry your mom and left my birth mother behind. Technically, I should be calling you Big Sister." A chill shot up my spine. Peyton was the child of my father and his first love? My throat burned dry. No wonder Lucas recited the terms of Grandpa Sterling's family trust, like he had it memorized. The smile on Peyton's lips turned from sweet to venomous, her eyes darkened. "Your mother destroyed my family back then, so now I'm stealing your husband. Call it even." So this, all of this, had been her plan all along. Heat flared in my chest like a silent fire. I threw the blanket aside, about to get out of bed. But Peyton moved like a snake, grabbed my wrist, her nude-colored nails pressing into my skin, leaving pale dents. She leaned in, and in one swift, practiced motion, pulled a slim dagger from the inside pocket of her coat, gleaming under the hospital lights. Before I could even call for a nurse, the blade sliced a short but deep line, like it had been rehearsed 100 times, straight down her own left forearm. "Ah!" Her scream tore through the air. Blood seeped through the white silk, blooming like a crimson flower. Fast, round, terrifyingly perfect. She collapsed onto the floor, her hands trembling, clutching my legs, whimpering like a trained actress. "Skylar, please don't kill me. I didn't mean to." The door burst open again. Lucas rushed in like a gust of cold wind. He didn't ask. He didn't look at the wound. He didn't see my empty hands. All he saw was the blood on Peyton's dress, and his reflex to protect her kicked in before logic could. One hard shove, my shoulder slammed into the wall, the IV line trembled violently. "I told you, if there's a problem, take it out on me. Why would you lay a hand on Peyton?" he yelled as he slammed the emergency button. Nurses and doctors flooded in, stretchers clattered, orders barked out in urgency. They lifted Peyton up, and just before disappearing through the door, Lucas turned back, his eyes pitch black, cold as steel, and threw a sentence straight at me, each word slicing through the air like a blade. "Skylar Sterling, I'm not letting this go." I collapsed onto the cold tile floor, my mind a tangled mess. Right and wrong blurred, real and fake indistinguishable. The footsteps in the hallway stretched out like an endless smear. I sat there for a long time, until night wrapped the hospital window in a black sheet. My phone buzzed. My assistant's voice cracked from panic. "CEO Sterling! Something's happened! There's been an incident at Hudson Yards." I shot up. "Report." "Material defect. Partial collapse on the 42nd floor. One worker dead, 2 seriously injured. Social media is blowing up. Reporters are swarming. Stocks dropping fast." I closed my eyes, the sound of blood rushing in my ears. And the materials had always been Lucas's responsibility. 15 minutes later, I stormed into the Sterling and Company headquarters lobby. My reflection in the glass looked pale, disheveled, but my steps headed straight into the private elevator. I was going to trace the cloud back up. Every email, every authorization document, every approval chain, anything to prove who signed off, who was responsible. The CEO office door swung open, and I froze. Lucas was sitting in my chair, leaned back slightly, wrist dangling like he was sipping tea. In front of him was my company laptop, the internal screen glowing black with white code scrolling fast, a script running line after line like slashes from a blade. The backup server was being wiped. My heart plummeted. "Stop it!" I ran forward, but the 2 bodyguards, solid as walls, grabbed my shoulders and slammed me down into the leather chair. The seat was ice cold. Lucas rose slowly, adjusted his cuffs, and stepped toward me, one quiet movement at a time. The glow from the screen lit his face in a cold blue wash. "The project was under deadline," he said, like he was explaining a boring lecture. "The backups weren't ready." All I had was the signed authorization. From you, he tilted his chin toward the screen. "And now, the server's gone." I could hear every beat of my own heart. "3 lives," Lucas continued, his voice low, sharp as ice. "Consider that the lesson I've left for you, Skylar." My lips trembled from rage. "Because of Peyton, you let innocent people die. Was it worth it, Lucas?" I stood there, my shoulders still sore from the fall, my head ringing from the cascade of shocks. I tried to inhale, but the air had turned thick. My vision darkened at the edges, like ink spreading. The metal on the armrest was freezing under my fingers, but sweat still slicked the back of my neck. Someone called my name, distant and warped. The floor tilted slightly, then tilted more. I saw the glass door of the office blur into a strip of light. And just before everything cut out, like someone had thrown a switch, I heard Lucas's voice, still issuing orders. The darkness closed in. I was unconscious for a full day, waking up in a strange hospital. The moment I opened my eyes, Lucas tossed an iPad onto the bed like it was some lifeless object. The screen lit up with a stream of videos, posts, messages. "See for yourself," he said curtly. I flipped it over and saw everything exploding. The entire Hudson Yards workforce was on strike, banners stretched across the gates of Sterling and Company, the victims' families screaming for justice, reporters swarming in, and my name hashtagged straight to the top of trending. The comments were like lashes, tearing me apart, piece by piece, and at the center of that storm, every thread was pulled by a single hand. Lucas standing there, wearing a mask of righteousness. "You have no other option now. I'm the only one who can flip public opinion back in your favor," he said, his tone, if not kind, was at least convincingly fake. Then he stepped closer, his eyes lit with a cold glint. And what I want is simple. You apologize to Peyton and promise never to make her life difficult again. As if the entire world revolved around protecting her spotless white shoes. I laughed, looking at him like he was the lead actor in a ridiculous play. Let me say it again? You want me to bow to her? Keep dreaming. Lucas's face dropped, then darkened, every muscle in his face twitching. He nodded 3 times, like confirming a decision already made. All right, fine, perfect. Then he turned to the guards, barking a command like a general issuing a battlefield order. Get in here! From now on, watch her closely. No one gets in without my permission. He turned back, his eyes razor-sharp and frozen. Skylar, you do know Peyton's true identity now, don't you? She's also part of the Sterling bloodline. In fact, I never really needed to marry you. At the upcoming wedding, the bride will be Peyton. She's going to rejoin the Sterling family and reclaim her inheritance. As for my family, they'll be investing everything into Sterling and Company. And you'll rot in prison for your mistakes. So that was it. He had known everything from the start, knew exactly why Peyton had come for me. And still, he chose her. I once thought this engagement was 2 people holding hands, walking forward together. Turns out, I had walked straight into a carefully engineered trap. At this moment, there wasn't even a flicker of feeling left in my heart. Only cold. And cruelty. When he finally left, I quietly opened the bedside drawer, pulled out the iPhone the nurse had slipped to me in secret, and dialed a familiar number without the slightest tremble. What you offered before, I accept. But I have one condition. I want Lucas to lose everything. On the other end, a low male voice replied, steady and firm, as you wish. Just minutes later, noise erupted outside the hospital room. Shouting, things crashing, then a sharp thud, like someone had been taken down. The door burst open. Grayson Mercer, in a black trench coat, white dress shirt unbuttoned at the collar, eyes gleaming with absolute cold, walked in. Behind him were Lucas's 2 bodyguards, now unconscious on the floor. Without saying a word, he came straight to me, carefully lifting me from the bed, his hands cold but steady. Don't worry, his voice low, calm. Everything's taken care of. Oh, and I prepared a little wedding gift for you, too. I nodded gently, didn't ask. Just threw on a coat and let him guide me out the door. Lucas still believed that as long as he married someone, that person would automatically receive the full share allocation Grandpa Sterling left behind. But he forgot one simple thing. The Mercer family had more than one son. And that clause in the family trust he thought was the golden key? It only applied to me. His entire life, he chased power without realizing the very rules he tried to exploit were never on his side to begin with. At the so-called wedding of the century that Lucas and Peyton had been loudly preparing, everything was dazzling. Crystal chandeliers lit up hundreds of evening gowns, champagne clinked softly, laughter mingled with the sound of string instruments. Reporters packed both sides, camera lenses sweeping across the gold-leafed room. Lucas, in a black tux, stood center stage like a king. Peyton, draped in a snow-white wedding gown, walked toward him amid a storm of applause. But just as the MC began to speak, the massive LED screen behind them, originally playing a slideshow of sweet, romantic images, suddenly went black. 1 beat of silence, then 2, then 3. Murmurs filled the room. Lucas turned back, frowning. "What's going on?" he snapped. The tech operator panicked, clicking wildly. Then suddenly, the screen lit up again, but no more romance. A video appeared. High resolution, fixed angle. Lucas, inside the living room of the Mercer penthouse. Half his face in shadow, his voice echoed coldly through the speakers. "Just do exactly what I say. Skylar Sterling's assistant is working for me. Contact him directly when the time comes. If anything goes wrong, blame it all on her." The room exploded like a bomb had gone off. Guests, business moguls, politicians, reporters, everyone stood up, gasping, cameras flashing wildly. Lucas froze. Peyton went ghost white, hands trembling around her bouquet. A few people even snorted, whispering, "God! He set her up?" "Turn it off now," Lucas yelled, lunging toward the stage, but no one could stop it. The system had been hacked remotely, full access locked out. He shouted, yanked the power cable. The screen went dark. But it was too late. Everything that needed to go viral had already been recorded, already sent. And across the ballroom, reporters were clicking like mad, each flash going off like a blade. "Who did this? Come out right now!" Lucas roared, voice ragged with fury. No one answered. Only hundreds of camera lenses aimed straight at his face. Peyton clutched his arm, voice shaking. "Lucas, someone planned this." It had to be. That sentence made him freeze for half a second. A flash of something familiar sparked in his eyes. Doubt. There was only one person with the motive, the reach, and the reason to humiliate him like this. Skylar Sterling. He stepped down from the stage, about to charge off. But Peyton gripped his arm tightly. "Lucas, don't go. There's no turning back now. First, finish the ceremony. Once I'm officially a Sterling, I can help you reverse this." She looked up at him, eyes lit with a manic gleam, dressed in blind faith and power. Lucas looked at her, their eyes locked, greed, calculation, and fear entangled. A long silence passed. Then he nodded, jaw clenched. "You're right," he said softly. "Power is the only voice that matters." Peyton smiled, placing her hand on his chest. Together, they stepped back to center stage. Just as the string quartet began playing again in the grand ballroom, the large doors at the far end of the hall suddenly swung open, causing every guest to turn their head. Attorney Ryan Holt, dressed sharply in a charcoal gray suit, walked steadily down the aisle. The chandelier light reflected off his glasses, casting a cold, precise aura. He wasn't here to celebrate. His voice rang out, crisp and deliberate, slicing through the murmurs. "Good evening, Mr. Mercer." "Miss Whitmore, I am the legal witness for the original family trust of billionaire Grandpa Sterling. Today, under the authorization of Miss Skylar Sterling, I am here to disclose the final terms of that trust." The entire ballroom froze. Lucas stepped forward slightly, about to speak, but Ryan Holt had already taken the mic. His eyes were stern, his tone steel-sharp as it echoed through the gold-leafed room. After Grandpa Sterling's death, all real estate and company shares were distributed publicly among the descendants. However, one sealed addendum was held privately, and its contents are as follows. Granddaughter Skylar Sterling, only if she marries a member of the Mercer family before the age of 30, shall inherit the full voting shares of the company. And this clause, he paused, looking directly at Lucas, applies solely and exclusively to Miss Skylar Sterling. It was like the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. Peyton stood frozen, lips trembling. Her wedding bouquet slipped from her hands and hit the floor, white petals shattering like glass. She rushed at Ryan Holt, yanking the folder from his hands, flipping through the pages, each rustle loud in the stunned silence. "This can't be real!" she screamed, voice cracking. "Why only Skylar? She faked this trust, didn't she? Say it!" Ryan didn't flinch. Not a muscle moved. His voice stayed calm and professional. "As an attorney, I am legally bound to verify the authenticity of this family trust." Mrs. Skylar Sterling had no intention of making this public. This was a private matter within the Sterling lineage. However, due to recent public defamation, she officially authorized me to release it today. Then, lowering his voice, he pulled out another envelope. "Additionally, Ms. Sterling has asked me to deliver this lawsuit notice to Mr. Mercer. Your wife vandalized her limited edition car worth tens of millions. If you fail to compensate within 3 days..." Lucas stood frozen in the center of the ballroom, legs unsteady. The overhead lights poured down on him, cold sweat beading on his forehead. The murmurs of the crowd swirled around him like a small storm. His lips parted, but no words came out. And in that moment, he finally understood. Why I'd been so calm all these days. Because to me, he had never been a rival, just a puppet in a meticulously arranged game. Ryan turned to leave, but Lucas staggered forward, voice hoarse, desperate. "Where is Skylar?" "I want to see her. I need to talk to her." But he never got an answer. From the entrance, 2 police officers walked in, their badges gleaming under the reporter's flashing lights. One held up his ID, voice firm. "Regarding the Hudson Yards incident that resulted in 1 death and 2 serious injuries, we have received formal accusations implicating you in direct involvement. You'll need to come with us for questioning." The soft clink of metal handcuffs echoed through the thick tension. Peyton covered her mouth and collapsed. And Lucas, in his expensive tuxedo, was escorted out between hundreds of flashing cameras. Everything he had used to mask the truth, reputation, marriage, media control, collapsed within minutes. Thousands of miles away, I sat inside Grayson's Sarth Gray McLaren 720S, watching my iPhone light up with a message from Ryan Holt. The New York Post headline blared on the screen: "Wedding of the Century at the Plaza. Deepfake scandal. Groom arrested in front of page 6. The story had shot to #1 trending, online discussions blazing. I looked out of the window, Manhattan glowing, the golden lights flickering across the windshield. The wedding I'd dreamed of for years was the very one I destroyed with my own hands. Grayson glanced over, a faint smirk on his lips. "What's wrong? Regret it now?" I shook my head, eyes focused on the cars ahead. "No, I just hate myself for ever believing him." He chuckled, low and sharp enough to split the silence. "Well, even if you did, it's too late now." Grayson opened the car door, pulled a prepared folder from his bag, and handed it to me. His gaze equal parts stern and soft. "Come on, it's time for you to make good on your promise." 3 years ago, the Mercer family exploded in what the press called an amicable divorce. But behind closed doors, it was brutal. Lucas's mother, his father's longtime lover, replaced Grayson's mother with a marriage certificate and a thin, triumphant smile. The first thing she did was exile Grayson abroad, canceled his cards, froze his accounts, and sent a cold-blooded email to the family's legal team. Reject all repatriation requests. At the time, I had just started seeing Lucas, too busy laughing at his syrupy promises of engagement to notice the scent of gunpowder simmering beneath a pride-driven dynasty. Until that London business trip. Rain pounded the city. The hotel door opened, and there was Grayson, leaning against the frame, hallway light splitting his face in half, one side in glow, the other in shadow. He looked me dead in the eyes, no soft preamble. "I came to take back what was mine, and also to steal you from him." I stood still, hand still holding the room key, feeling my heart shift rhythm like a stone had just dropped into deep water. "Grayson Mercer," I said slowly, "what do you want from me?" He answered, "A legal marriage. In return, I'll use my entire network and European resources to help you stand firm at Sterling and Company. My target is Lucas, and you look like you need that too." I studied him carefully. Compared to Lucas, Grayson carried the air of a true heir, calm, well-mannered, and born with the kind of poise that made every decision land exactly where it should. 23 years in the Mercer household had taught him how to wield power and strike back silently. No bluffing, no begging, only solutions laid out with keys already turned. I looked into his eyes and saw a certainty I'd been missing in myself. "All right," I said. We finalized the marriage quickly, took the certificate photo, and sent it straight to attorney Ryan Holt. The inheritance protocol for the voting shares activated like a set of interlocking gears. So seamless, it felt soundless. After that, we stayed in Manhattan for a few days. The temporary Tribeca apartment, pale oak wood, floor-to-ceiling windows, and the New York night like a map of stars. Grayson poured tea and placed it in front of me, his voice low. "We haven't known each other long." Even if we're married on paper now, it's fine. We can start from love. He didn't say it romantically, but like a commitment that came with accountability. I didn't turn him down. I began letting myself hear his footsteps in the kitchen, smell his cologne on the coat, slung over the chair, feel the way his hand lightly touched my back, crossing crowded streets. Polite, but with an undercurrent of quiet possession. One evening, Ryan's email arrived. All set. The entire transfer of voting shares was complete. I sat in front of the screen, opened the attached file, watching the string of legal language weave into something like steel mesh. From now on, my name was tied to the kind of authority that could pull out every nail Lucas had driven into the company the wrong way. The day I returned to Sterling and Company, Midtown, glass reflecting a gray sky, I stepped into the CEO elevator with a new keycard, feeling like I was finally coming home after a long, stormy war. But when the office doors opened, Lucas was already there. When he saw me, his face softened, like the weight of the whole world had just been lifted off his shoulders. He took half a step forward, his smile stretched thin as if trying to pull together a life already falling apart. "Skylar, I knew you'd come down to see me." He reached out, trying to take my hand. A gesture that used to be habit, used to melt me, used to mean something I cherished like a promise. But this time, I stepped back. Just one step. Not far, but enough to make it clear that a boundary had been drawn. His hand froze mid-air, fingers trembling slightly, before curling into a fist and slipping into his pocket. "I regret it, Skylar." Lucas's voice cracked at the end, like it was being strangled by his own shame. Everything before this was my fault. Can we get married? This time, you picked the date. I stood still, didn't blink. He kept talking, his voice lower now, pleading, like someone clinging to the edge of a riverbank as the current dragged him under. "You know the board is circling your voting shares. If you want to stay ahead, marrying me, just like Grandpa wanted, is still the safest path. He always said the Mercer family owed him a debt." That arrogant posture, the one that once crushed my dignity, was gone. In its place stood a man terrified of losing everything. I looked at him, silent for a few seconds, then asked slowly, "Didn't you once say Peyton was also part of the Sterling family?" "The two of you are already married, so the debt my grandfather owed is paid. You showing up here again? Does that make sense to you?" Lucas's face changed instantly. He shook his head, voice urgent. "No, Peyton isn't part of the Sterling family." Then his eyes locked onto something behind me, and suddenly he froze. I turned instinctively. Grayson had walked in, gray trench coat, steady stride, and that look in his eyes, like Manhattan itself, tilted around him. Lucas stammered, his voice sinking to rock bottom. Grayson didn't respond right away. He walked straight over, leaned in close to my cheek, and gently adjusted the strap of my coat. Just a small gesture, but enough to shatter whatever pride Lucas had left. Then he slid his arm around my shoulder and said calmly, "Of course I came to find Skylar." Lucas's eyes darted back and forth between the two of us, filled with disbelief. After a long pause, he dropped his gaze, tried to lower his voice, but his tone was sharp with bitterness. "Skylar, don't let Grayson fool you. He played nice just to win over my father. When I exposed him, he got kicked out. He's the kind of person who'll do whatever it takes to get what he wants." I didn't want to hear another word. I pulled out my phone, opened the photo of our marriage certificate, and held it up in front of him. "Lucas," I said slowly, my voice cold, each word scraping like a blade over stone. "If you ever speak trash about my husband again, I'll see you in court." The moment I finished, Lucas's eyes jolted in shock, fixed on the certificate in the photo, stunned, speechless. I turned away. Grayson's hand squeezed mine gently, not hard, just enough to remind me that this time I had someone walking beside me, not behind. We walked into the Sterling and Company headquarters. The marble floor reflected our silhouettes, 10 fingers intertwined. No hiding, no shame, no explanation needed. The news, Skylar Sterling's flash wedding to the true heir of the Mercer family, spread through Manhattan's elite circles like lightning. The whispers, the curious stares, the congratulations, half genuine, half speculative, all came pouring in within hours. A CT-11. That evening, Grayson's phone vibrated on the glass table, and the name Senator Mercer lit up like a cold blade. His voice was dry and sharp. "Come home immediately." It's important I didn't need to guess to know the trail led back to Lucas. I stepped forward, handed Grayson his trench coat, and spoke gently. "Let's go. I'm coming with you, after all. Grayson may not be the sole heir of the Mercer family, but he was still Senator Mercer's son." Returning to pay respects was the right thing to do. The Mercer estate in the Hamptons still smelled faintly of damp pine and old liquor. The moment the door opened, the senator pointed his finger straight at us, his voice like a hammer. "What have you done?" The living room was blindingly bright. Lucas sat between his parents, lounging, a cold smirk on his face, his eyes laced with smug provocation. I didn't flinch. I stepped forward and dropped each word onto the marble like nails. "The marriage was my idea." A vein twitched at the senator's neck, but he forced himself to retain the composure of a seasoned politician. "Skylar, don't forget, your grandfather made it clear. You were supposed to marry Lucas. And now you've gone and married Grayson without a word. How do you plan to explain this to the Mercer family? How do you explain it to your own bloodline?" I lifted the corner of my mouth in a cold smile. "Senator, even based on my capabilities alone, I'm more than able to control Sterling and company. And every turn I've endured, every wound I've taken, I will reclaim from the companies that dared defy the Sterling name." What I said wasn't just a statement, it was a warning. The Mercer family now was nothing more than a cracking shell, seconds from shattering. If I hadn't shielded them before, they would have collapsed in Lucas's hands long ago. And if I wanted to, Mercer would be the first name on the chopping block. The senator narrowed his eyes, his whole body tensing, but he understood exactly what I meant. The atmosphere in the living room turned deathly still. Eventually, it was the senator who broke the silence. He stepped toward his study, motioned to Grayson. "It's been years since I saw you. You've gotten thinner. Come, let's talk privately." Grayson gave a slight nod, glanced at me to reassure me, then followed him into the study. As soon as the two of them disappeared, Lucas stood up and came toward me. His voice carried a hint of desperation. "Skylar, I've already told Peyton. I won't see her again. I swear she won't appear in front of you." I smirked, as if Peyton even had the chance to appear before me again. She'd smashed my Lamborghini, couldn't afford the damages, and now the case was in court. Despite insisting she was part of the Sterling family, in the end, she was just an illegitimate child no one acknowledged. My parents had passed away, no way to verify DNA. And everyone else in the family were cunning old foxes, none of them foolish enough to back her and go against me. Peyton's so-called identity had long become a useless pawn. What face would she even have left to show up in front of me again? I looked down at Lucas's hand, gripping the hem of my coat. A thought flashed through my mind. Maybe the one they'd been trying to keep all along wasn't Grayson, but me. My gaze followed his arm up to his face. "Do you really like me that much?" Lucas thought he saw hope. He nodded frantically. "Yes, I like you." Lucas almost couldn't hold back his excitement. "We've been together for 3 years. Our bond runs deeper than anything you and Grayson have." Just then, a scream pierced the air outside, clearly the voice of the senator. A bad feeling hit me. I ran out, heading straight toward the garden. But when I got there, the sight froze the blood in my veins. The senator lay motionless in a pool of blood, a pair of scissors stabbed deep into his stomach, crimson soaking the gravel beneath him. Not far away, Grayson stood frozen, right arm still extended as if he had been about to catch him. "You animal! That's your father!" Lucas shouted, then struck Grayson across the face with a bone-crushing slap. He immediately called for the butler to summon an ambulance. Grayson seemed completely stunned by what had just happened. He held his face, trembling, stepping back in shock. It wasn't me. I didn't do it. I swear it wasn't me. His eyes drifted toward me, filled with fear and pleading. I grabbed his shoulders, choking back the tremble in my chest. Don't worry, I'm here. The ambulance screeched into the driveway. They dressed the wound and rolled the gurney away. I pulled Grayson back into the living room, trying to steady my voice. Tell me everything, minute by minute. But he shook his head, mute as if bolted shut. Not a word. That silence weighed like lead. And too conveniently, the exact spot in the garden had no cameras. He had the skills to defend himself, yet he stayed quiet. And that silence immediately became the noose the Mercer family tried to slip around my neck. I took a deep breath. What if this was a setup? What if Mrs. Mercer orchestrated it to stop the will from being changed, and Grayson stayed silent because, after all, he was still her son? Suddenly, every puzzle piece snapped into place. But theories needed proof. I pulled Grayson out of there. He stumbled like someone drained of blood. I didn't push. A CT-12. Early that morning, he said he wanted to go to the hospital. He's out of danger. I need to see him. I nodded, took the keys. Wait for me, I'll drive. I had just backed the car out of the garage, turned to look back, and Grayson was gone. A cold chill clamped down on the back of my neck. Just as I reached for my phone, it buzzed. A message from Peyton. If you want him alive, come alone, attached location, abandoned warehouse, Red Hook, Brooklyn. I stared at the screen, breath caught in my chest. No hesitation, I drove straight there. The warehouse reeked of salt and rust. Grayson was tied inside the car, slumped, breathing heavily. Peyton stood across from him, eyes flat like dead water, tossing a stack of papers on the table. I don't want much. Just your signature. Transfer all the shares your father left to you. Sign, and I'll let him go. I looked straight at her, not even bothering to hide my disgust. All this for a few shares? Even if you get them, you're still just an unacknowledged, illegitimate child. No power, no name, no seat at the table. Peyton's smile twisted. She lit a match, flame flickering like a glowing insect. Looks like you don't want Grayson alive after all. Wait, I yelled, sweat breaking on my back. I'll sign. I gripped the pen, its point sliced the paper with black ink like a blade. I threw the pen and ran to the car. Locked. Grayson was still out cold. I pounded the glass. It didn't budge. Behind me, Peyton's laugh echoed through the metal walls. Burn with him. The lighter dropped. Whoosh! The gasoline ignited instantly, flames crawling like rabid dogs. Heat blasted my face, my hair crackled. I grabbed a metal rod, swung with all I had. Crash! The glass cracked, shattered, shards slicing into my skin, blood spraying like wine on gravel. Grayson! Wake up! I reached through the glass, popped the lock, dragged him out, arm around my shoulder, pulling him through the black smoke. The fire stretched, blocked the path. Sirens screamed, boots pounded, orders shouted. The warehouse doors burst open. NYPD and firefighters stormed in. Peyton stumbled, but before she could recover from the panic, her wrists were twisted back. Click, cuffed. The agreement was yanked off the table, sealed into an evidence bag. Forced contract, void. Smoke curled overhead. I collapsed, knees to chest pounding like it would split open. Grayson leaned against my shoulder, his breathing steadier now. That night, the investigator sat across from me, yellow light washing across a cold steel table, voice low and measured. The Mercer Garden incident. It's clear now. They laid out photos from the side gate camera and location data. Mrs. Mercer appeared exactly during the window. The blood on her leather gloves matched the senator's type. Her fingerprints matched the scissors. Motive, the officer said, was to stop the will from being changed. Lucas, the one who covered it all up, was arrested by NYPD that night, before he could wipe his messages with Peyton. I leaned back in the plastic chair, cold soaking through my shirt, smoke still clinging to my hair. Somewhere, wind from the Hudson River dragged a siren long and thin, like thread stitching shut everything that had just been torn open. I closed my eyes. My fingers still smelled of rust and ink. The soft clicks of the crime scene cameras felt like quiet, final punctuation. Peyton was led away in cuffs, the void contract slipping from her hand like a broken toy. And Lucas, the one who chose the shadows, was now face to face with the darkness he helped build. A CT-13. I handed over all remaining matters to my legal team. After being discharged from the hospital, Grayson and I chose a late autumn afternoon to hold our wedding again, on the rooftop in Tribeca, overlooking the Hudson River shimmering under golden sunlight. No cameras, no large crowd of guests, no flashing lights. Just a few close friends, a string quartet playing Everlong softly beneath the sunset, and white petals drifting in the breeze. Grayson stood beside me, still in his neat black suit, but the look in his eyes had changed. No longer the boy with scars from being thrown out of his home, but a man who finally knew where he belonged. I looked up at him and smiled gently. The evening light reflecting in his eyes turned them into a shade of honey. People once said Grayson was just a child abandoned by both parents, a boy with no home. But from this moment on, I knew. We were home to each other. As the strings moved into the final bars of Everlong, I glanced around and saw everyone smiling. Ryan Holt stood quietly, raising his glass. A few of Grayson's friends chuckled softly as the wind swept my veil into the sky. I didn't say any grand vows. I just whispered into his ear, "From now on, we no longer have to protect ourselves alone." He squeezed my hand, nodded slightly, and those eyes, after all these years, finally carried the light of someone who had found a place to rest. And up there in the wind-blown air, as the city lights began to glow, I suddenly understood. Sometimes, happiness doesn't come from reclaiming what was lost, but from learning how to let go of what no longer deserves to be held. Some wounds only stop hurting when we stop touching them. And some people, even those who once made us lose everything, still end up teaching us what it means to rise again on our own 2 feet.